Confidence is not something that appears magically one morning. It is built quietly through repeated evidence that you can depend on yourself. Most people misunderstand confidence because they think it means believing that you are better than everyone else. It does not. Real confidence is much calmer. It is the knowledge that whatever happens, you can face it, learn from it, and continue stop waiting for other people's approval, because confidence becomes fragile when your sense of worth depends on how others see you. If you constantly need praise, reassurance, attention, or recognition, you place your emotional stability in the hands of people whose opinions can change from one moment to another. Someone may admire you today and criticize you tomorrow. Someone may support your decision while another person questions it. If your confidence rises and falls according to these reactions, you will never feel truly secure within yourself. Real confidence begins when you understand that other people can have opinions about you without becoming the authority over your identity. This does not mean ignoring everyone. Wisdom requires listening. Constructive criticism can reveal weaknesses. Experienced people can teach you valuable lessons, and honest feedback can help you improve. The difference is that you listen without surrendering your judgment. You consider what is said, examine whether it is useful, and then decide what deserves to be accepted. You do not automatically believe praise, and you do not automatically believe criticism. You evaluate both. Many insecure people spend enormous amounts of energy trying to manage how they appear. They change their behavior to impress certain people, hide their weaknesses, exaggerate their achievements, and constantly monitor whether others approve of them. This creates an exhausting performance. The more you try to control everyone's perception, the less freedom you have to become who you actually are. You begin living according to an imaginary audience instead of your own principles. Confidence requires breaking this habit. Ask yourself what you would do if nobody were watching. What goals would you pursue if you did not need to impress anyone? What decisions would you make if you knew that some people would disagree? These questions reveal whether your choices come from conviction or from the desire for approval. You should also understand that rejection is not always a judgment of your worth. A person may reject your idea because of timing, circumstances, personal preferences, or their own limitations. An employer may choose another candidate. Someone may not appreciate your personality. A friend may disagree with your decision. These experiences can hurt, but they do not automatically define your value. When you interpret every rejection as proof that something is wrong with you, you become afraid to take meaningful risks. You begin choosing safety over growth. The desire for approval can therefore become a hidden prison. It prevents you from speaking honestly, trying new things, setting boundaries, and pursuing goals that others may not understand. To become more confident, practice making small decisions without seeking unnecessary permission. Choose what you genuinely value. Express an opinion respectfully. Say no when something violates your priorities. Start a project even if people around you do not understand it. Allow someone to disagree with you without immediately changing your position. Each experience teaches your mind that disagreement is survivable. You do not need everyone to approve of you. In fact, trying to please everyone guarantees that you will eventually betray your own priorities. Different people want different things from you. One person wants you to be ambitious. Another wants you to remain comfortable. One wants you to speak more. Another wants you to stay quiet. One wants you to take risks. Another wants you to avoid them. If you attempt to satisfy all these expectations, you will become confused about who you are. Instead, develop internal standards. Decide what kind of person you want to become, what principles matter to you, and what behaviors you are willing to accept from yourself. Then measure your progress against those standards. When you live according to your own values, external approval becomes a bonus rather than a necessity. You can appreciate praise without becoming addicted to it. You can accept criticism without collapsing under it. You can experience rejection without abandoning your direction. This is where confidence becomes stable. You stop asking the world, "Am I enough?" and begin asking yourself, "Am I becoming the person I respect?" That question shifts your attention from performance to character, from appearance to substance, and from approval to self-trust. The goal is not to become indifferent to people. It is to stop making their opinions the foundation of your identity, build confidence through competence, because the deepest confidence does not come from pretending to be capable. It comes from becoming capable. You can repeat positive statements to yourself every morning, but if you have no evidence that you can handle difficult situations, your confidence will remain fragile. Real confidence grows when you develop skills, gain experience, solve problems, and repeatedly prove to yourself that you can improve. Competence gives your mind evidence, and evidence is far more convincing than empty reassurance. If you want to become confident at speaking, you must speak. If you want confidence in your work, you must develop the knowledge and skills required to perform well. If you want confidence in making decisions, you must make decisions, observe their consequences, and learn from them. Confidence is therefore not something you wait for before taking action. Action is what creates much of the confidence you are waiting for. Many people make the mistake of believing they must feel ready first. They imagine that confident people naturally know what to do, never feel nervous, and never make mistakes. This is an illusion. People who appear confident often became confident because they spent years practicing through uncertainty. They made mistakes, received criticism, adjusted their methods, and continued. Their calmness is often the result of accumulated experience. You can create the same process in your own life. Start with one area where you want greater confidence and identify the specific skill behind it. Instead of saying, "I want to be more confident," ask, "What would a capable person in this situation know how to do?" If you fear public speaking, learn how to organize ideas, practice your delivery, record yourself, and speak in front of increasingly larger groups. If you lack confidence in your career, study the skills that make you valuable, seek feedback, and deliberately take on challenging projects. If you struggle with social situations, practice listening, asking questions, expressing opinions, and starting conversations. The more specific the skill, the more clearly you can train it. Competence also grows through repetition. One attempt rarely changes your identity. 10 attempts begin creating familiarity. 100 deliberate attempts can create mastery. Repetition reduces uncertainty because your brain begins recognizing situations that once seemed unfamiliar. What initially required enormous mental effort eventually becomes automatic. This is why practice is so important. You are not simply improving a skill, you are teaching your mind that difficult situations can be handled. You should also welcome constructive feedback because it reveals gaps between how you think you are performing and how you are actually performing. Feedback can be uncomfortable, especially when it challenges your self-image, but it can accelerate growth when used intelligently. Do not treat criticism as an attack on your identity. Treat useful criticism as information. Ask what can be improved, make the adjustment, and try again. At the same time, do not become dependent on constant feedback. The ultimate goal is to develop enough understanding that you can evaluate your own performance honestly. Confidence increases when you can look at your work and recognize both strengths and weaknesses without exaggerating either. Another important principle is to choose challenges that stretch you without overwhelming you. If you attempt something far beyond your current ability without preparation, failure may reinforce unnecessary self-doubt. But if you consistently choose tasks that are slightly more difficult than what you already know, you create a steady cycle of challenge and improvement. Each completed challenge becomes evidence that you can handle more than you previously believed. Over time, your comfort zone expands. You should also remember that competence does not require perfection. A capable person can still make mistakes. The difference is that mistakes no longer destroy their sense of identity because they understand how to correct them. You can say, I did this poorly, without saying, I am incapable. You can identify a weakness without turning it into a permanent label. This distinction allows you to improve without constantly attacking yourself. Confidence becomes strongest when it is built on reality. You know what you can do because you have practiced it. You know what you cannot yet do because you are honest about your limitations. And you know that limitations can often be changed through learning and repetition. This creates a quiet form of confidence that does not require constant performance. You do not need to convince everyone that you are capable because your actions provide the evidence. The more you develop competence, the less you need to seek approval because you begin trusting your own preparation, judgment, and ability to adapt when circumstances change. Keep promises you make to yourself because self-trust is one of the strongest foundations of genuine confidence. Many people focus on gaining the trust of others while ignoring the relationship they have with themselves. They make commitments to friends, family, colleagues, or clients, and understand that breaking those promises damages credibility. Yet they make promises to themselves every day and repeatedly break them without realizing the psychological cost. They say they will wake up early, exercise, study, finish a project, stop wasting time, or begin pursuing an important goal, but when discomfort appears, they postpone the commitment. One missed promise may seem insignificant, but repeated broken promises gradually teach the mind that your own words cannot be trusted. You may still speak confidently, but internally you know that your intentions often disappear when comfort becomes more attractive. This weakens self-respect. Confidence grows when your actions repeatedly confirm what you tell yourself. You do not need to make enormous promises. In fact, smaller commitments are often more powerful because they are realistic enough to keep consistently. If you decide to study for 30 minutes every day, then protect those 30 minutes. If you promise yourself that you will complete one important task before entertainment, honor that agreement. If you decide to practice a skill 4 times a week, follow through. Every completed commitment becomes evidence that you can rely on yourself. Over time, these small pieces of evidence accumulate into something much larger, self-trust. Self-trust changes how you approach difficult situations. When you know that you generally follow through, challenges become less frightening because you believe your future actions will support your intentions. You may still feel nervous, but there is an internal certainty that you will at least make the attempt. Without self-trust, even simple goals can feel overwhelming because part of your mind expects you to quit. Another important part of keeping promises is learning to make realistic commitments. Some people destroy their confidence by creating impossible standards. They decide they will completely change their lives overnight, work for 12 hours every day, eliminate every distraction, and become perfect immediately. When reality fails to match the fantasy, they abandon everything. A better approach is to create commitments that challenge you while remaining sustainable. Consistency is more valuable than dramatic intensity. It is better to keep a small promise for months than to make a huge promise and abandon it after 3 days. You should also understand that keeping promises does not mean becoming rigid. Circumstances can change. Sometimes you genuinely need to rest, adjust a deadline, or change the plan. The important distinction is between consciously changing a commitment and casually breaking it because you do not feel like doing the work. If you need to change the promise, make the decision deliberately rather than allowing temporary discomfort to decide for you. This preserves your sense of control. When you fail to keep a promise, do not turn the failure into a reason to attack yourself. Examine what happened. Was the commitment unrealistic? Did you underestimate the difficulty? Did you create too many distractions? Did you depend entirely on motivation? Learn from the failure and rebuild quickly. Self-trust does not require perfection. It requires reliability over time. You become someone who may fall off track but knows how to return. This is far more valuable than pretending you never struggle. Keeping promises to yourself also creates discipline. Every time you choose the commitment over the impulse, you strengthen your ability to act according to long-term priorities. You teach your mind that discomfort does not automatically cancel responsibility. Eventually, the behavior becomes less difficult because repetition turns effort into habit. You begin to see yourself differently. Instead of thinking, I wish I were disciplined, you begin thinking, I am someone who follows through. That identity is powerful because behavior often follows the identity you repeatedly reinforce. Confidence, therefore, grows quietly through ordinary decisions. It is built when nobody is watching, when there is no applause, and when quitting would be easy. Every promise kept tells your mind that your intentions have weight. Every commitment honored strengthens the relationship between the person you are today and the person you want to become. When you trust yourself, you no longer need constant reassurance that you are capable. You have evidence from your own behavior, and that evidence becomes the foundation on which stronger confidence can be built. Control your inner dialogue because the way you speak to yourself can quietly determine how you interpret failure, criticism, uncertainty, and even your own potential. Everyone has an internal voice that constantly interprets what happens. When something goes wrong, that voice decides what the event means. One person thinks, I made a mistake, so I need to learn. Another thinks, I made a mistake, so I am useless. The event may be identical, but the interpretation creates completely different emotional and behavioral responses. This is why confidence requires more than changing external behavior. You must also become aware of the conversation happening inside your own mind. A negative inner dialogue often develops automatically. You may hear thoughts such as, I am not good enough, people will laugh at me, I always fail, or everyone else is better than me. Because these thoughts appear inside your own mind, they can feel like facts. But a thought is not automatically a fact simply because you experience it. It is an interpretation that deserves examination. When a negative thought appears, pause and ask whether it is accurate, useful, and supported by evidence. If you made one mistake, does that truly mean you always fail? If someone criticized you, does that mean everyone dislikes you? If you are inexperienced, does that mean you are incapable of learning? These questions weaken exaggerated thinking and create room for a more balanced perspective. Controlling your inner dialogue does not mean repeating unrealistic positive statements while ignoring reality. Telling yourself that you are perfect when you know you made a mistake will not create genuine confidence. Instead, use accurate language. Say, I made a mistake, but I can learn from it. Say, I am not skilled at this yet, but I can practice. Say, this situation is uncomfortable, but I can handle the next step. This type of self-talk is powerful because it combines honesty with possibility. You acknowledge reality without turning reality into a permanent limitation. Another important habit is noticing how you describe yourself. Words like, I am lazy, I am awkward, I am unlucky, or I am weak can turn temporary behavior into permanent identity. There is a major difference between saying, I procrastinated today, and saying, I am a lazy person. The first describes an action that can change. The second creates an identity that your mind may continue to defend. Be careful about the labels you repeatedly give yourself. Your mind learns from repetition. If you constantly describe yourself as incapable, you may begin avoiding situations that could prove otherwise. If you describe yourself as someone who learns from difficulty, you become more willing to practice and adapt. Your inner dialogue also becomes especially important after failure. Failure can trigger harsh self-criticism because the mind wants to find a simple explanation. Blaming yourself completely can feel like control because it creates the illusion that you understand everything. But excessive self-criticism rarely improves performance. Analysis does. Instead of saying, I am terrible at this, ask, what specifically went wrong? Instead of asking, why am I like this? Ask, what behavior produced this result? Specific questions create specific solutions. You should also protect your mind from constant comparison. Social media and public success stories can make it seem as though everyone else is progressing faster. When you compare your private struggles with someone else's carefully presented achievements, your inner dialogue can become unnecessarily cruel. Remind yourself that you are seeing only part of another person's story. Measure your progress against your own previous level. Confidence grows when you recognize improvement, even if that improvement is small. The goal is not to create an inner voice that praises you constantly. The goal is to create an inner voice that is honest, calm, constructive, and demanding without becoming destructive. Speak to yourself as you would speak to someone you genuinely want to help. Correct mistakes without humiliation, demand effort without contempt, recognize weaknesses without turning them into identity. When your inner dialogue becomes more disciplined, your reactions begin to change. Criticism becomes information instead of destruction. Failure becomes feedback instead of identity. Difficulty becomes a challenge instead of proof that you should quit. You begin developing a mind that supports action rather than sabotaging it. Confidence becomes stronger because the person you spend the most time with has finally become someone you can trust to speak with clarity when life becomes difficult. Become comfortable with discomfort because confidence cannot grow if you constantly avoid everything that makes you nervous, uncertain, embarrassed, or afraid. Most people want confidence without experiencing the situations that create it. They want to feel fearless before speaking, completely prepared before acting, certain before making decisions, and guaranteed to succeed before taking risks. But this is not how confidence develops. Confidence is built through repeated experiences of entering uncomfortable situations, discovering that you can handle them, and learning that discomfort is not the same thing as danger. Every time you avoid a challenge simply because it makes you uncomfortable, you may gain temporary relief, but you also teach your mind that the situation is something to fear. The next time it appears, the anxiety may become stronger. Avoidance therefore creates a cycle. You feel discomfort, you escape, you feel relief, and your brain learns that escape was the solution. Breaking this pattern requires deliberate exposure to manageable challenges. You do not need to throw yourself into the most frightening situation imaginable. Start with something slightly outside your comfort zone. If speaking in front of a large audience terrifies you, begin by speaking to one person, then a small group, then a larger group. If you are afraid of expressing your opinion, start by respectfully sharing your view in ordinary conversations. If you fear rejection, make small requests where rejection is possible, and learn that hearing no does not destroy you. Each experience provides evidence that discomfort can be survived. This evidence becomes confidence. You should also learn to distinguish discomfort from genuine danger. Your body can react strongly to uncertainty even when there is no serious threat. A racing heart, nervousness, sweating, or hesitation may simply mean that something is unfamiliar. Instead of interpreting these sensations as proof that you should stop, recognize them as signs that you are stretching yourself. You can feel nervous and still act intelligently. You can feel uncertain and still take the next step. You can feel embarrassed and still continue. This is where courage develops. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the ability to act according to your values while fear is present. Another important part of becoming comfortable with discomfort is accepting imperfection. Many people avoid action because they are terrified of looking foolish. They want to perform perfectly on the first attempt. But every skill begins with awkwardness. The beginner speaks poorly before learning to communicate clearly. The inexperienced entrepreneur makes mistakes before understanding the market. The new athlete performs imperfectly before developing technique. If you demand perfection immediately, you will never give yourself enough opportunities to improve. Allow yourself to be a beginner. Mistakes are not evidence that you should stop. They are part of the training process. Discomfort also appears when you set boundaries. Saying no can feel uncomfortable. Disappointing someone can feel uncomfortable. Choosing your priorities over another person's expectations can feel uncomfortable. But if you constantly avoid discomfort by pleasing everyone, you eventually lose control over your own life. Confidence requires accepting that some people may disagree with your choices. You cannot build a strong identity while trying to eliminate every possibility of disapproval. You should also practice staying present during uncomfortable moments instead of immediately escaping into distractions. When anxiety appears, people often reach for their phones, entertainment, food, or other forms of immediate relief. These distractions can prevent you from learning that the uncomfortable feeling would eventually pass on its own. Sometimes the most useful response is simply to remain present, breathe, observe the feeling, and continue with the task. Over time, your tolerance increases. You discover that discomfort rises, peaks, and changes. It does not control you forever. The more discomfort you willingly face, the larger your world becomes. Conversations become easier. Challenges become less intimidating. Failure becomes less terrifying. Opportunities become easier to pursue. You stop asking, how can I avoid feeling uncomfortable? And begin asking, what is worth doing even if it feels uncomfortable? That question changes the direction of your life. Confidence does not come from creating a world where nothing makes you nervous. It comes from becoming the kind of person who can remain steady when something does. Let your actions create your confidence, because confidence becomes strongest when it is supported by evidence. You can tell yourself that you are capable, repeat positive statements, imagine success, and study the behavior of confident people, but eventually your mind wants proof. That proof comes from action. Every time you do something difficult, keep a commitment, learn a skill, face uncertainty, recover from failure, or take responsibility for a decision, you create evidence that you can rely on yourself. Confidence is therefore less about convincing yourself that you are powerful and more about repeatedly demonstrating to yourself that you can handle reality. Many people wait for confidence before they act. They think, when I feel ready, I will start, but readiness often comes after action, not before it. If you wait until fear disappears, you may wait forever. The first step may feel uncomfortable. Your voice may shake. Your work may be imperfect. You may make mistakes. But action gives you information that thinking alone cannot provide. Once you act, you discover what you actually need to improve. Then you adjust and act again. This creates a cycle of experience, learning, and increasing confidence. You should begin with small actions that challenge you without overwhelming you. If you want to become more confident socially, start conversations instead of simply imagining yourself becoming outgoing. If you want confidence in your career, volunteer for difficult responsibilities and develop the skills needed to handle them. If you want confidence in your physical abilities, train consistently. If you want confidence in expressing your opinions, practice speaking honestly and respectfully. Every action becomes a piece of evidence. Over time, those pieces form a stronger belief in yourself. The key is consistency. One courageous action can inspire you, but repeated action changes your identity. When you repeatedly do what you once believed you could not do, your mind begins updating its understanding of who you are. You stop seeing yourself as someone who is trying to become confident and begin seeing yourself as someone who can handle difficult situations. This is why habits are so powerful. A person who consistently keeps promises, practices skills, and faces challenges does not need to constantly manufacture confidence. Their behavior has already built it. Action also protects you from excessive overthinking. The mind can create endless possibilities before you act. You can imagine every way a conversation could fail, every mistake you could make, every reason an opportunity might not work. The longer you remain in this mental space, the larger the fear can become. Action breaks the loop. Instead of imagining 10,000 possibilities, you take one step and gather real information. Reality often turns out to be less frightening than imagination suggested. You also need to understand that action does not guarantee success. Sometimes you will work hard and still fail. Sometimes you will prepare carefully and still receive rejection. Sometimes your best attempt will not produce the outcome you wanted. But even then, action creates something valuable, experience. You learn what did not work, you discover weaknesses, you gain information for the next attempt. This is why failure does not have to destroy confidence. If your confidence depends on always succeeding, it will remain fragile. If your confidence depends on knowing that you can respond to failure, it becomes much stronger. Let your actions teach you that you can recover. Do not measure yourself only by outcomes you cannot completely control. Measure yourself by preparation, courage, consistency, learning, and the willingness to return after setbacks. Another powerful form of action is doing things when nobody is watching. Public achievements can bring praise, but private discipline creates character. Study when nobody knows. Practice when nobody applauds. Keep your promises when nobody can reward you. These actions build a relationship with yourself that external recognition cannot replace. Eventually, confidence becomes quieter. You no longer need to announce how capable you are because your behavior speaks for you. You can enter unfamiliar situations without needing certainty because you trust your ability to adapt. You can accept that you may not know everything because you know you can learn. You can face rejection because you know rejection is not the end of your story. You can make mistakes because you know mistakes can be corrected. This is the confidence created by action, not the belief that nothing can go wrong, but the knowledge that whatever happens, you can respond, learn, and continue moving forward.